Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, let me try screen sharing again then. Or is my screen good? Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want us to wait a minute or two, or are you good?
You can start whenever you want to.
Great. I'm gonna take a sip of water and I'll start. Are you recording the webinar or is it just me talking?
What?
Is there any specific time that you're recording it or can I just start?
You can start. It's been recording.
Okay, great. Um, Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nitesh Lalam and I'm here with my partner. And we're here to present to you Cultivating Connections, Building Consistent Outreach Across Different Seasons. So just as a quick overview, what we're going to do, we're just going to be talking about what FIRST defines outreach as. We're going to be talking about our program, AvengerRobotics. Then we're going to lead into what the importance of outreach is. And then we're going to just talk about starting, maintaining, and expanding initiatives and what comes along with that. So just as a quick background, FIRST defines outreach as any activity a team does to spread the awareness of STEM, robotics, as well as the values of FIRST beyond just like competing and winning with the robot. So think of this as essentially almost anything you do outside of an FRC qualifier can be defined as outreach. So for some big like subpoints, you have community engagement. So whether this be local robot demonstrations or running camps and workshops at schools, libraries, and local groups, this is obviously, I guess, the base of outreach. You also have promoting FIRST and promoting STEM. This is just expanding not only younger students, but anyone in your community to introduce them what FIRST is. So like any FIRST program, FLL, FTC, or FRC, as well as STEM in general. Obviously, depending on where your demographics are, what your community is, the level of how STEM is present might vary. AvengerRobotics, for example, is in a county with about 8 other FRC teams. So this isn't necessarily a robotics dry zone, but when it comes to promoting FIRST in our area and STEM in general, we try and do more, I guess, workshops and webinars that deepen what FIRST is and robotics. Some examples of this could be done through our Girls in STEM events. Rather than just running basic stations or workshops, we try and bring in industry professionals and existing professors in STEM to kind of talk to the younger girls about what they do specifically. We also do a lot of community partnerships. This is working with sponsors, businesses, and local organizations. Usually, any sponsor that we work with hosts some side of community night themselves. And so this is obviously taking our robot and our demonstration abilities and going down there to kind of, I guess, show off our program. And lastly, you have inspiring recognition. So this is kind of applying whatever we learned in robotics to the rest of the real world. This can be through different sports teams, basic other presentations you do, any projects, and that's something else that we like to discuss. And when it comes to recognition, it's that idea of pairing someone that's already successful with people that are trying to get into the field. Again, having that professor talk to the younger girls in STEM. So moving on, Avenger Robotics is our program. We're based out of a public high school in Forsyth County. The way that our school works is it's not necessarily a magnet school, but it's a career and college academy. So we don't necessarily have a base middle school or elementary schools that we pull from. Our students come from all over the county. So outreach is really important to us because it's what kind of builds our team as well as our school population, because we don't have that guaranteed number of people at our school. So our specific initiatives that we do are STEM nights, robotics competitions, First Goes Green, robotics team mentoring, community partnerships, as well as girls in STEM. And then we're just going to give an overview about what we do in outreach and then explain how, I guess, you could do outreach. This is to kind of serve as an inspiration or a basic guide to how we approach this large subject. So starting with STEM nights, so this is the most rudimentary thing that we do. STEM nights obviously expose kids, adults, and anybody else that attends to what FIRST robotics and STEM is. This can vary in two different ways. While we host STEM nights at our own school, we also go to existing elementary and middle school STEM nights to kind of insert ourselves in there. So what this does for us is it kind of establishes an existing, I guess, consumer base, if you can think about it that way, where we're guaranteed to expose our program to a specific number of students. And all our STEM nights are usually organized in stations where they can rotate around. And then one of the stations is kind of having our robot out there to kind of demonstrate. And we also pair this with our FLL and FTC kits that we have, just so people can see all different levels of FIRST. This obviously keeps kids and parents engaged while the kids are playing with the robots. We usually talk to parents about what FTC, FRC, and FLL are and kind of explain what FIRST is to them. And then in the past year, we've done about 20 STEM nights, not just at our school, but this is including like local STEM nights that we set up a station at. Leading into that, we also are very heavily involved with our local robotics competitions. As we mentioned before, our students come from all over the district. So one way we really get our name out is through helping organize and even hosting middle school robotics competitions, where you usually have a few thousand people in attendance. This would be 40 robotics teams, plus their parents, plus any siblings they might bring. And what we do here is we help volunteer through judging, running, scorekeeping, queuing, anything that comes with running a robotics competition. And this not only allows us to give back to the middle school programs that we came from, but it also, again, gets our name out. I know the only reason I'm a part of AvengerRobotics and at Alliance in general is specifically because of this initiative. And then we also do our First Goes Green initiative. This is obviously what we do to help keep our community clean. This comes through organizing different events. Sometimes we go out with demonstrations of our CANbot, which I'll talk about later, and kind of showing it off to students, as well as general presentations of what recycling can look like. We also organize a lot of park cleanups, shore sweeps, and roadside cleanups, another large part of what we do. We host recycling drives, not only just to for aluminum cans or other small parts. We try doing technology drives because that's really large in our area. A lot of people will have old tech that they end up donating, and we have a community partner with us that we recycle it through. And they also sponsor us in return. A large part that we've been pushing this year and last year is our aluminum recycling through our Novellis CanBot. This is a grant that we were able to fortunately receive, which helps us build our CanBot. I think it's in the left bottom image. So this serves as a really good way to engage with kids, especially at our STEM nights, because it gives them an activity to do. We have a Plinko board set up. So you drop a can through at the top, it goes through a little thing. And by the time it hits the bottom, you can press a button, which serves as a piston, to crush the can. And the kids get the can out and then they recycle it. It's just a really engaging way and an activity for people to do, but we can discuss what FIRST is. From the end of last season, so think after Worlds, to now we've had about 10-ish park cleanups. And this is something that we try and do year round because it doesn't necessarily require any other activities. It's low resource intensive, aside from obviously like gloves, trash bags, and obviously your time. The last thing I'll be talking about here is mentoring. So this is something, again, we do largely in our district just because there's a lot of robotics teams. This is weekly mentoring depending on school needs and meets. So we usually talk to the middle schools. I think we have about 8 or so in our county that we're working with right now, and that's a majority of schools that have robotics. And this is a really good way for our students to go out, give back to the program that they might have been a part of in the past, and also, again, build that entire, I guess, team interest. Most of the people on our team this year that are rookies have gone through this idea of mentorship. One of our student volunteers has gone down there almost every week and mentored their team. Obviously, with the first mantra of being it student-centered, our big goal and idea is that we as volunteers never put hands on the robot. We can hold cables in place. We can obviously take apart small pegs if the kids are unable to do it themselves. When it comes to designing, building the robot as a large project, that's completely up to the kids because, again, it's supposed to be a student-centered thing. We work directly with those schools, and it really helps build a team brand and value and, I guess, idea where you see us mentoring at your school weekly, you see us at our competitions, and it's us again, and it establishes a good ecosystem for, think of it like a pipeline almost. In the past year, we've mentored over 100 pre-K elementary and middle school robotics teams across FLL, FTC, VEX, and almost any other program, just because our idea is getting the idea of our team and robotics out there as much as we can.
So we also do a lot of community partnerships with Rotary Clubs, City Council, and Chamber of Commerce, food drives, co-host events, and participating in community events. Because for AvengerRobotics, we want to build and support our community and get and just spread awareness and try to help out where we can. So one of our main initiatives that we do is Girls in STEM. So Girls in STEMs allow young girls in elementary school to find a passion for STEM. We've had over 180 girls attend our events and helps them foster an interest for STEM and pursue a career related to STEM. So after attending a Girls in STEM event, we hope that they go on to middle school and to high school and join their robotics team. And that's actually how I got into AvengerRobotics. I went to Girls in STEM events and I loved it.
And so moving on, we're not going to play the entire impact video just for sake of time, but obviously this is what builds your impact video. This is what obviously helps in all of your award judging, because it's showing what you do outside of just being a normal competitive team. It's kind of a good way to, I guess, tie in everything that you do within your community to help differentiate yourself from other teams. And we take our outreach very seriously. So moving on, we're going to be talking about the importance of outreach and I guess why it's meaningful for us to do.
So outreach is important because it promotes STEM education, helps raise fun for your team, gets your team recognition, and it also helps you develop important life skills. So when it comes to promoting STEM education, you help inspire the next generation by also raising awareness for the importance of STEM in the community. So a team can help inspire students to pursue activities and careers in STEM, and can inspire younger students, older students, parents, anybody who comes to an outreach event. So outreach can also help you raise funds and attract new sponsors. So engaging with local businesses, a team can showcase its success and mission, and you can also apply through grants from outreach from foundations and government programs. Your team can also be recognized through outreach. You have increased visibility. So when a team actively engages in outreach, they become well-known and can boost their credibility while working with influencers, mentors, and different organizations. It can also lead to future opportunity for team members.
With this, I'm thinking more like internships or potentially like future jobs, just as a side note.
Yeah. So you can also develop important life skills like communication. So during outreach events, you have to go out and you have to speak with parents, with kids, with businesses, and you also have to network and build connections in STEM related organizations. So these soft skills can help you later on in your career, and it just develops a well-rounded student.
And so now we're going to be talking about starting initiatives. So hopefully by explaining our own initiatives, you've gained a good idea of what initiatives are. But just to, I guess, further hammering it down, initiatives is the idea of bigger long-term efforts with like clear goals and ongoing impacts. So let's say you want to do a small activity. Let's say it's a women in STEM event, for example. It can be a one-term activity that stands alone, but usually when you do it year over year, you want to tie it to a larger initiative, because this helps, I guess, build a story of what your team is trying to advocate in your community. Rather than just one-off random activities that might seem random, you usually want to try and build towards something. Again, this is kind of the idea of crafting a story for all the activities you do in your community. When presenting to judges, the more clear you are on what your main ideas are, the more clear you are to what your main initiatives are, the easier it is to obviously plan and organize them, but also explain them to judges. Rather than just doing random community cleanups or hosting random events, if you build a consistent story, then it really helps you stand out. And you can even further delve into this by specializing your initiatives. Something we've done in years past is do STEM with people with disabilities. And this ranged a lot, but we picked a specific organization, Creative Enterprises, and we really honed in on that specific type of disability. So again, the idea of initiatives is just having a large organizational aspect to your outreach documentation. And so another thing when starting initiatives, you need to understand your specific community. So obviously this goes into community needs, or resources are available to you as well as those in the community, and obviously what your team values are, as well as FIRST values. You want to make sure they both align. When talking about community needs, think more about what your specific community looks like. We're fortunate enough to come from a robotics heavy zone. So our initiatives don't necessarily focus on introducing our community to STEM, but kind of deepening it, kind of trying to specialize in different things. We have done other outreach in larger communities. So one example is when we go further west, usually run into areas where you might want to do more exposure events on like, hey, what is robotics? What do the future career plans look like? What is a competitive robotics teams? But in our area, we usually just focus on, again, how do you turn a not so competitive robot to be more competitive? You obviously want to look at your own resources. Every FRC team has different resources available to them. One of our large constraints is time. We try and run a medium to small team compared to other programs of our size. And this is something that we struggle with because we're constantly training rookies, but we also need to be able to pull some of that talent in order to go mentor other teams or run events. If we're holding practice at our own facility, Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, then we can only really have that constraint of doing outreach events on those Wednesdays and Fridays. It's that entire understanding what's available to you and how you plan to use it. This is another thing that you have to consider when talking about your community. If you come from an area where resources are scarce, some people might not always be able to go to events held at specific locations. It's your responsibility to make sure that, let's say, you want to host an event, you need transportation and stuff arranged. Obviously, it's hard, but in a, I guess, more south area, you want to host events directly at schools. That way those students can just stay after that school and again, attend your event rather than them driving somewhere else. You obviously want to think about values. When working with some religious organizations, this line can be blurred, but as long as you're doing things that align with FIRST values and your own team's values, it should be fine. We also want to make sure we're tailoring outreach efforts to maximize your impact, establish sustainability, and maintain growth. When it comes to maximizing impact, it's that idea of getting a good return on investment. The amount of resources, time, and money you spend should be able to turn back into something that's truly, I guess, scalable. It needs to be something that you're able to repeat and sustain, which is obviously talking about sustainability. Can you continue doing this over many years? And are you able to grow this idea throughout different years? One example is we used to do an activity called Dogs in STEM, where we tried to go out to pet shelters and do robotics that way. This wasn't really sustainable because as years went on, the population of who was running that specific shelter would change a lot, and it would lead to a lot of communication errors, and it led to a lot of time and concentration that we could have spent somewhere else to maintain a, I guess, higher impact. And obviously you want to be able to make sure your different outreach efforts can be able to grow over different years. This leads to the idea of quality versus quantity. Usually when you do outreach events, you're thinking about numbers, but you also want to make sure your actual event has some quality built into it. So think of quality as the impact of each initiative that you're having, and quantity is how many either initiatives happen or how many people show up. So when it comes to our robotics competition volunteering, it usually comes down to quantity, because those competitions, the quality isn't necessarily up to us. What is in our control is going out there and actually having enough volunteers there and doing as many of those events as we can. Quality, however, comes down to when we run our own STEM nights. We want to make sure that it's properly meaningful, and we try and drive home the message as much as we can. We obviously want to be able to strike a balance, and this might change between your different outreach initiatives and programs. Some people might view it as 50-50. Obviously, the more time you spend doing a specific initiative, the better it gets and the more you're able to expand out to it. Give me a second, I'm going to take a sip of water. So this is leading into maintaining initiatives. So maintaining initiatives, we break into three main subparts that are responsible. So documentation, relationships, and consistency. When it comes to documentation, you want to make sure you're properly tracking events. This includes when it is, if the venue is booked, obviously you're budgeting into it, how many team members you plan on having there, and then post-event, you want to track the amount of statistics. So how many people showed up, where they're from, what time they showed up, and we usually leave a survey at the end just to understand how we can improve on them. And so by comparing statistics over different years, you're able to tell which initiatives are paying off in terms of how many people show up, which locations tend to be the best, as well as who your target audience is. So whenever we do outreach events, this is a good way to kind of figure out what's working, what's not. You also want to make sure you build good relationships. So we have a really good relationship with people that run robotics competitions in our area because we have a reputation. We're really engaged volunteers. And on top of that, we take our job very seriously. By being able to have that reputation, you build a good relationship with those specific event organizers. And in the future, whenever they do other events, they're going to reach out to your team first just because you've shown that you're the most professional people there. Whether it's a robotics competition or some other event we're doing, you're able to further partner with that community. And it's one of those things where if you help them out, they're likely to help you out just because you've shown yourself as a key figure and a trustworthy source. You also want to make sure you're consistent. So this is keeping momentum. If a specific outreach event is continuing to work, you want to keep it up. One example is we used to host STEM nights every week at our specific school, and you'd have the same amount of people show up week after week. If you take a week break, then the following week you're less likely to have those people return, just because you're having going momentum that you want to keep up. Obviously, a week break might be necessary, but you want to make sure, again, that initiative is done within that time frame, just to make sure you have people show up. You want to make sure you have a good presence on social media and you have frequent communication. Leading up to an event, you always want to make sure, for example, you have an email list and you're sending emails out as often as you can, just so people know that your event is happening. People know how to park at that event, how to show up to that event, and what they need to bring. This makes sure that you have a good attendee pool that knows what's expected of them, that knows where your event is taking place, and etc. And this leads into retiring initiatives. So obviously, a lot of teams will test out different outreach events that work and events that don't. So you want to ask yourself 3 main questions. Is this initiative still making a real difference? Are we putting in more resources than we're getting out? And can this realistically continue year after year? Which goes into your, obviously, community needs, resources, and sustainability, right? So I guess the slide kind of goes over what the main points are, but meaningful impact is pretty obvious. Is this actually making a meaningful impact, or is this initiative no longer aligning with what we want to do in our specific community? If you're going to a new area and your goal is to spread STEM and you've already done that, well, then it might be time to retire that specific type of event. Resources, again, this was what we mentioned with our Dogs and STEM event. It took a lot of time and resources, but we didn't necessarily get a lot of impact out of it. This is something that you have to consider, especially because you have limited resources as an FRC team. You necessarily can't spend all the time and effort into something that isn't giving you back the same amount of return on investment as either other initiatives or the same initiative did in the past. And sustainability, can this initiative continue year after year? Is this something that I can see myself doing next season, 3 seasons in the future? And then you also want to make sure this specific initiative is not like leading to volunteer burnout, or you don't want to, again, kill that community interest, which will in turn make it hard to grow that specific initiative in the future. A large other thing is you can't make sure an initiative relies on a specific individual. Whenever leadership or the team transitions, it should be sustainable. It should be something that's able to be picked up by anyone who's in charge of that initiative. This moves on to establishing relationships with your local area and your sponsors. So we do this in a few, I guess, basic ways, which is our team newsletter, which not only goes out to sponsors, but it goes out to any community partner that we have. We also do consistent communication, as I mentioned before, with the email list, and we obviously involve partners in as many events as we can. Whenever we have a new sponsor, we try to invite them out. One example is next week we have a day at our school called Shield Day, and one of our new community partners is showing up to that day and bringing their own specific robotics equipment and ideas that they want to sell to the community to there. You want to showcase mutual benefits. As we mentioned before, when you're helping a team, they should be able to help you back. And you obviously want to emphasize a shared long-term vision. You want to emphasize that whenever you're partnering with these community partners, you're going to stay there and for the long run. One way that we did this in the past is, again, selling the idea of, hey, we're going to do these technology drives at this many schools, and we hope to expand in the future. That way, we make a larger impact on our community, but you as business also get more exposure. When you're likely to pitch yourself as a reliable and long-term partner, you're more likely to get a buy-in from a sponsor or potential community partner. This is just an example of our newsletter that we sent out, I think, 2 years ago. And again, it's just showing what we do in our community. Another large important part is volunteers and engaging them. You want to make sure your entire team is involved. What we do on a team basis is require specific people to have a specific amount of hours. An example of this is across our entire team, you're required to have 5 hours mentoring your local team, because that kind of ensures that everyone on the team is involved, or at least gets exposure to what mentoring is. If that's something that they want to continue, then great. If it's not something that they want to continue, then that's fine. Obviously, you want to make sure you treat your parent and student volunteers well. You want to provide food. You want to obviously give out volunteer hours to any organizations that might track it, and you want to reward volunteers. At the end of every year during our last meeting or banquet, we usually recognize who's done the most in our community within the team level, just because it helps to build, I guess, recognition and a sense of goodwill because you helped out. And then community partnerships. whenever you work with a specific organization, you want to make sure that it's a good organization you're working with. You want to identify potential partners in your specific area depending on need. One example is we had the hurricane happened last year, and we were able to go to one of the organizations we work with, ICNA, to kind of establish a food drive. And so what we did here is we've done events with them in the past, so we were able to keep up and kind of channel all the food and different materials that we had raised into a specific outlet. So even when working with other organizations, you want to be able to establish clear roles and responsibilities for your community partner as well as yourself. Building redundancy is an important part. If you have two people responsible for the same task, it's going to get done. Whether it be within your own organization or with your partner, you usually want to leverage like different resources and expertise of who's had the most experience doing something, just so that task gets done. Marketing is a large example of this. Usually whenever you're doing a community event with someone else, you want to make sure someone on your team, as well as someone from the actual community partner, is both in charge of marketing. That way they're able to leverage their own expertise and resources, and also it builds that idea of redundancy to make sure that you're definitely getting that marketing out. This obviously helps you enhance reach, and you obviously share impact, not with the community, not only for yourself, but with the community you work with. So it looks good on both of you. And again, fostering long-term relationships is important, just because whenever sudden things like the hurricane comes up, you have an already established community partner you can easily rely on.
So documentation for a team during outreach is really important, because documentation makes sure everybody is on the same page, everybody knows what's going on, and it helps you win awards as proof for the judges. So tracking events, like the number of events per year, guest attendance, outcomes, and descriptions, are certain things you can do with documentation. Making sure you have good statistics and your statistics are accurate is also really important, because, well, again, making sure everybody's on the same page and that the seniors who left have the same, or the freshmen who come in have the same information as the seniors who left, which is why documentation is so important.
And so this is something that I would like to go over. Obviously, when you're documenting outreach, you want to make sure you're using the right definition. So I've just kind of took this specifically from FIRST. All teams are required to adhere to specific definitions in their documentation for any FIRST awards, including the Impact Award. So whenever you write down, you want to make sure you accurately not only report your numbers, but report what you're doing. There's a difference between starting, mentoring, and assisting a team. And you want to make sure that you're accurate in recording all three. That way, whenever you do have a team that you started, it's fully distinct. And also, obviously, it's honest, because integrity. You also want to make sure you emphasize the difference between you running, hosting, and supporting events, just because, again, it's really important to make sure you're accurate in your documentation. So this is just something to keep in mind as you go along.
So being consistent is really important when it comes to hosting outreach events. So consistency is key. Being consistent through social media. So social media helps you advertise events, event signups, event updates. It adds personalization, and it promotes the team and informs sponsors of team activity. So you can promote any event you want through social media. You can talk to sponsors through social media and share your team's impact through event recaps. But making sure you retain momentum is equally as important. Making sure you have consistent events by establishing a schedule and growing as you go. Don't try to force the artificial growth. Let it come slowly.
And then moving on, you obviously have expanding initiatives. So once you already have figured out what it is that you want to do, what you want to continue with, there's different ways you can expand initiatives. There's obviously the idea of adaptation, which is growing with your community and accepting challenge. One example of this is, well, we mentor a bunch of public robotics teams. Our area has experienced an increase in private teams. So it's important to make sure that you're not, I guess, discriminating between which teams you mentor, but it's about drawing specific lines. In addition to mentoring and partnering with public schools, we also try and volunteer at private robotics competitions as much as we can, just because it's the idea of, again, growing with your community and establishing no specific bias. You obviously want to experiment, you want to collaborate with new people, try out new ideas. This is the idea of starting small and then slowly scaling up, and eventually you'll know whether you want to continue that initiative or not. Organization, having email lists and like plug-in emails really helps. what we've done over the past few years, have a single email list that's grown to be a few thousand people now. So whenever we start an event, we can just send that sign up out to the existing base that we already have. And it sounds really simple, but it really makes a difference when you have that established base versus when you don't. Sign up sheets. As mentioned before, we have a single sign up sheet that we use for the entire team. So we know who's going to be at an event when. The people know what they're responsible for, what their role is, what time it is, what date it is. It just really helps them keep that go, especially when you're doing year-round outreach. I think on average, we mentor over 10 teams a week, and it's really important to have that actual organization going on just so you know who's there and who's responsible to be there. You obviously want to make sure you have hour tracking sheets for that accurate information, and you want to be able to delegate tasks for the documentation. We do have a few dedicated individuals to this, but obviously as build season starts and it gets more busy, things change. So examples of adaptation experimenting. I think I've been over this, but a large part is obviously with experience comes growth. Whenever we do a new type of event, we know what works, what doesn't, and what we should change. Again, I've mentioned this before, but having that feedback form, it sounds really simple, but all it takes is 5 people to leave a good response for them to spread it to other people that they know, and again, build that specific outreach. Any feedback helps. Obviously, you want to experiment with new ideas on a small scale first. If you host this large event and it flops, go back to the drawing board. If it works, scale it up. You don't want to put too much time, energy, or specifically money into an outreach event that you haven't really tested. We've done this in the past, and it obviously doesn't bode well when you're expecting 50 people and like 10 show up, because now you have all these resources that you can't necessarily do anything with. Staying organized, this is a sign-up sheet. I think this is from 3 years ago, but it just gives a good idea of how that specific year ran. And obviously, as mentioned before, as veterans graduate and as rookies come in, they should be able to go back and have good access to all the past mentoring statistics. And then that concludes our presentation. If you have any questions, I guess now's the time for it. Our contact information is below, and we usually try and reach out to any FTC or FRC team interested. In the past month, so since September started, I think we've had meetings with 3 different FTC and FRC teams worldwide, just because it's always good to, I guess, kind of figure out what you can do better, what you can learn from other teams, and kind of share that experience. But yeah, that's our presentation. Thank you so much.
If anyone has any questions, they can put it in the Q&A box or just raise your hand.
Oop, I see a question. How do we balance outreach initiatives so our volunteers don't experience burnout? So what we do usually is we have a set designated amount of people to a specific initiative. So for example, we have a few girls on our women in STEM team, and it's their responsibility to, I guess, maintain all girls in STEM events. And whenever, if some of them like, again, experience burnout, then we're able to ask other people on the team to just come in and take responsibility, but it's not the same amount of people that do every single outreach initiative. It's not like that type of idea where the same people volunteering every Saturday also have to do weekday outreach initiatives. We're able to cycle it through as long as you have the idea of I guess, almost like a chain of command where you have a few people that are responsible that are able to do the high skill work. And then you have, I guess, people below that can be easily switched out with just general volunteers from the team that are able to do normal volunteering work. How many students do we have on our team? So this is my 4th year on the team. The first 2 years, we consistently stayed below 40. And we usually had like a designated business and volunteer team of around 8 individuals. And as we've grown, that number has slightly expanded. I think right now we're sitting at 50 members is how many we've accepted, but some of those aren't necessarily committed members that are going to be with us throughout the entire season. But out of that, about 10 people are in charge of exclusively filling out impact, making social media posts, videos, maintaining finances and budgeting, and then obviously outreach. Hello, Natasha. I'd like to volunteer for the aluminum recycle opportunity. How can I help with this outreach initiative? You can just email us with like, I guess, your specific location and what you're able to do, or just with contact information, and I'd love to reach back out. Our aluminum recycling opportunity specifically is something that we started, I think, last year, but this year we've been able to expand it. Are you community-based or in a school? So we are a school team. We're under Forsyth County Public Schools. We're called Alliance Academy. We're not a normal public high school. We're more of like a career college academy. So we take our students from all the high schools in Forsyth, and it's a lottery process to get in. But that's why I guess we do a lot of outreach to make sure people are aware of what our school is. Yeah, no problem. Our school is also really focused on STEM. So we don't have sports at our school. If you want to do sports, you do it at your base school. But for your core classes, you just come to Alliance. Yes, we do partner with other schools. So this is also something that we're trying to do this year. A large thing that we want to try pushing forward is the idea of collaborative outreach. Usually with, I guess, in our community, it's become a competitive thing where it's necessarily like, oh, this is my robotics tournament, only we can volunteer here. But we've been trying to open up that outreach thing to be more collaborative. At the current VEX IQ events that we volunteer at, we do with other robotics teams. And this year we're trying to do initiatives with other schools. We've helped start a local FRC team in our area, and we're trying to, I guess, do collaborative outreach with them, just because if our main mission is spreading FIRST and STEM in general, it shouldn't turn into a competition. It should be more collaborative. But yeah, I think right now our main school sponsors, obviously all of our community middle schools, but when it comes to specific teams, it's going to be Denmark FRC. I think they're called Danes Robotics. And so we're going to be doing more outreach initiatives with them. But again, if you email us, we'd love to work with you too. We've recently been in contact with the team in Turkey that we hope to send supplies to, just because we have a lot of supplies we're not using that we would love to partner with that community to send out. Does that answer your question? You can ask more specific questions if that's not a one-to-one answer. How do you start partnerships with local businesses? I like the idea of community work like food drives and group recycling, but I was wondering what are the first steps to starting? So what we did this past year is we went out and we kind of hit a lot of local businesses in our areas. So this was just us, I guess, showing up at the door and just trying to talk with people. If those businesses are interested, they'll talk to you. If not, then they'll ask you to, I guess, leave. But the entire point of this is we've tried mass emailing in the past, and usually businesses ignore emails just because they know that you're mass emailing them. But when it comes to, I guess, our food drives and group recycling, these are businesses that we've had been in contact with for many years, but some new, I guess, partners that we've picked up, we've simply just gone to their door and kind of just talked to them. And we've been able to get in contact with like 1 or 2 people that are really passionate, and they represent their business on behalf of us. So when it comes to food drives, we started out volunteering with ICNA, and then that allowed us to build that specific relationship with that community organization where we have like a specific dedicated person that we're able to reach out to at any time. And if you want, we'd love to connect you with people. Again, just email us and we'd love to talk it out. How do you keep your team motivated? Well, I guess I mentioned that in the past, but whenever we do outreach events or volunteering events, we try and create a good, positive environment around our volunteers. A large thing that we've began doing is trying to develop a team culture. And so, as I mentioned before, we have specific teams that go and partner out and mentor or volunteer together. And so those people themselves will go out and I guess start being friends outside of just those volunteer events. We do like team dinners. We've gone to plays before with volunteer groups. It's establishing that positive relationship. That way everyone gets their work done. Everyone is happy to be there. And I guess everyone is collaborative. If that answers your question. I'm just making sure I've answered all the questions. If you have any follow-ups, you can ask now, and then obviously email, because that's a really good way to, I guess, further have that connection going. Does FRC and FTC have their league meets and competitions at the same time, or are they separate days? So right now, we don't run any FTC teams outside of our school. We used to in the past, but we currently, I think, mentor and are partnered with 5 FTC teams just in our local community. So since the FTC and FRC season don't overlap as much, we don't necessarily like have that issue. But whenever we do go like volunteer at FTC and FRC events, we try and make sure that whoever's necessary to like rookie training or I guess building the actual robot or designing or any like important real task on the technical side is still there. So we have say a dedicated team of 10 veteran technical technical team members. We try and make sure there's at least 5 of them there if we need the other 5 to go out and volunteer. But in our local area, FRC and FTC don't overlap as much until we get into like February, and even then we're able to balance it. But currently at our school right now, we don't have FTC and FRC teams running at the same time. In the past, we've just done that split. And there have been times when we did do an FTC team where some of the team members that are in both FTC and FRC usually just have to choose between one of those two. Does this end at 50 for the next session or what?
Yeah, the session ends at 1:50. So
Okay. Wait, if you have any other questions or if you want to like reach out in any way, email is right there, and we'd love to partner with literally anyone on anything, even if it's just like a small coffee chat. But yeah. Okay, do you want us to leave now since it's 50?
yeah,
Are you gonna end the session or we just individually leave?
I'll end the session.